I'm Tracy Townsend. This week on Face the State, we're headed back to school. The challenges facing school districts this fall and the new faces taking them on.
My son is a student in CCS, and so sometimes I'm wearing the hat of the superintendent, but all the time I'm wearing the hat of a public school parent.
My interview with the new Columbus City Schools Superintendent Dr. Angela Chapman, her plans for the state's largest school district, and what she says about the district's readiness for the start of class.
Our school can't afford a school resource officer like other schools could. So for us, the only thing we could do was to arm staff.
Districts arming themselves for the start of school, the money going to schools for protection, and why not everyone is included. And back in the conversation, the renewed redistricting debate, why issue 1, even though it's dead in the water, is playing a role in where and who you will vote for. Good morning, everyone. On what's the last weekend of the summer for most Ohio students, this morning, we are taking a look at some of the changes and debates happening about the school systems in the Buckeye State. For the state's largest school district, students and teachers will return to class with a new yet familiar leader, Dr. Angela Chapman. First this morning, I sat down with the superintendent before the school year officially kicks off to talk about some of the major issues facing the Columbus City Schools District and students. Columbus City School Superintendent Angela Chapman wants to make it clear that she understands what district parents want for their children as an educator and as a mom.
My son is a student in CCS, and so sometimes I'm wearing the hat of the superintendent, but all the time I'm wearing the hat of a public school parent.
The dual role, she says, helps her understand the assignment of guiding the state's largest school district through a significant leadership transition.
We want to be the city of choice. We also want to be the district of choice.
And ensuring staff, students, and the community of stability at the helm.
We know the magic happens in the classroom, and my #1 goal was to protect the energy and the space in the classrooms in our schools.
Chapman officially became superintendent July 1st.
The best is yet to come.
After serving as interim. It's been a whirlwind, from meeting with administrators to kicking off the new school year at Woodcrest Elementary, which has the year-round school program, and this month rallying more than 1,000 teachers at the Summer Professional Development Institute at the Columbus Convention Center. What do you think makes a good teacher? Because we know your roots are in the classroom.
Absolutely. So I really think there's an art to teaching, right? #1, we want all of our educators to really be passionate about the work that they are leading. We want them to see our students as their student.
In addition to passion, Superintendent Chapman says highly skilled educators can execute the critical mission of teaching, especially literacy. All CCS teachers are trained to teach the science of reading curriculum, which is based on 30 years of research, starting kids in kindergarten with the foundation of learning the alphabet and the sounds the letters make, and how to blend those sounds into words.
No matter what word they come across, they will be able to sound it out. They will have strategies in their toolbox, whether they're using their hands to sound out the words, cat, blending it together.
Does that speak to the need to kind of adhere to that 3rd grade reading guarantee?
Absolutely. And so we know that we want our students to be on track for literacy in 3rd grade, not because of the 3rd grade reading guarantee, but because that's a moral imperative.
Classroom teachers are also key to the imperative of reading. The need is high, but the candidate pool is low. I asked Superintendent Chapman about whether CCS has enough teachers.
Our recruitment efforts are still underway. We're still recruiting. In addition to the new educators that we have recruited, we also have daily subs as well as building subs. I think we have about 200 building subs and maybe 300 day subs that will be available to help us cover for vacancies as they arise during the school year.
Superintendent Chapman believes the first day, August 23rd, can be an indicator of what's ahead.
And all of the planning that we've been doing related to food service, transportation, curricular materials, hiring teachers, hiring bus drivers, hiring IAs, that's when it all comes together.
So she has a lot to do between today and the 23rd. Columbus City Schools, not the only district with a new superintendent at the helm. Several school districts have new superintendents this year, including Westerville, Hilliard, and Olentangy local schools. Those superintendents will have to work harder to attract new teachers. Ohio, according to a research group, has the 6th highest teacher shortage in the country. When you narrow that into Ohio's regions, the worst include the Southwest, Southeast, and West because of the difficulties of recruiting for rural parts of our state. There's also really just changes in attitudes toward the profession.
The health of the teaching profession is at or near its lowest point in the past 50 years. Many more teachers are saying that if they could do it all again, they would not become teachers. Many more teachers are saying that the stress of the job is not worth it.
Ohio has also seen a gradual decline of newly licensed teachers over the last decade, though according to the Fordham Institute, found that recently more teachers are staying on the job year to year. Kiana Dyches found one way Central Ohio is recruiting and training teachers.
Yeah, before credentials, Ohio teachers need at least 12 weeks of student teaching. The lack of pay for this work is just one thing getting in the way for people who want to teach. On the path to becoming a teacher, you'll find roadblocks.
There's financial barriers, there's time barriers.
And when you get the job,
it's not an attractive job right now. Teaching not a lot of people want to do it anymore. And it's also a costly educational kind of degree when the income that you get as a teacher isn't always the greatest.
It's part of the reason we're seeing a national teacher shortage.
I mean, it's been a huge issue already forever, but I think we're seeing it become an even bigger issue, especially after COVID.
And it's why Nasreen Dowd and our team created the Capital City Teacher Residency Program.
And it's a 2-ish year program, obviously depending on what individuals come in with, coursework-wise. And it gives them a chance to get their license or complete their degree while also maintaining some sort of income in the Columbus City School District.
Dowd is working with Associate Professor Bradley Conrad. He says the goal is bigger than getting teachers in the door.
That has been done. But it's about keeping them in there, because if you don't, you're just putting a Band-Aid on a gash, right?
The program aims to fix the problem for people like Thaddeus Anderson, who says there are barriers making it hard to move up.
You know, it's hard to stop with your daily life to continue forward with education.
He now gets to keep his job as an intervention specialist for CCS while taking online classes to get a license to teach, hoping to inspire his students along the way.
Maybe they want to be successful as well.
Kiana Dyches, 10 TV News.
Also this school year, Governor Mike DeWine wants to make teaching a registered apprenticeship program. This will allow schools to train new teachers who may already be working at a school. So think bus drivers, aides, or librarians. DeWine also made a major investment in schools when he signed this year's state budget. District leaders will have more than $1 billion to spend in the coming years. Several districts are also getting funding for upgrading school safety. However, some children will go to class this year and be protected by an armed teacher. Several dozen schools chose to arm their teachers after the governor signed House Bill 99 at the end of last year's legislative session. It's still a highly debated topic across the state. This morning, we looked through the state documents and found 41 schools this year have requested the training for teachers and staff to go through before they are allowed to have guns in schools. Those points on this map indicate where those schools are. Many are in our rural communities. 10 TV's Kevin Landers looks into the debate.
Joshua Lynn is not your typical school administrator because of the weapon attached to his hip. He says he's prepared to use it if someone enters his school with a gun.
I am fully prepared physically and mentally, if someone comes in there with a gun and it's pointed out, definitely, 100%.
Lynn works at Licking County Christian Academy with a student population of 60.
Our school can't afford a school resource officer like other schools could. So for us, the only thing we could do was to arm staff.
He says the March shooting at a Christian school in Nashville sparked the conversation to arm staff here.
The shooting in Nashville, the Covenant school shooting, there's a lot of parallels with that school and our school being a small Christian school.
In the Nashville shooting, a former student killed 3 9-year-old children and 3 adults before he was shot and killed by police. Lynn says he and other staff went through 3 days of training on how to confront an active shooter.
We definitely need ongoing training. I can't talk about the specifics about what we did. I can say that it involved scenarios in our own school building here, which was very insightful because things happen quickly.
While this school supports arming teachers, the Ohio Education Association, which represents 120,000 teachers, does not. Scott DeMauro is the president.
You introduce more guns into schools, especially among people who are minimally trained, who don't have this as their primary responsibility. You increase the odds of accidental shootings.
DeMauro says the bill that allows armed teachers in Ohio does not require enough training.
You know, requiring 24 hours of training really is completely inadequate. It's out of line with what other states do.
He says what schools should focus on is creating a nurturing environment.
Making sure that every student is nurtured, every student feels safe from bullying, every student feels like they are welcome, and that their learning environment is uplifted.
As for Joshua Lynn, he says so far, parents and students like the idea this school is protected by armed staff.
Families like it because it's the best way to protect students in a school is to have armed personnel at the school.
Kevin Landers, 10 TV News.
About 6% of active shooter incidents at K-12 schools since 1970 have taken place in Ohio. Schools are required to hold an active shooter drill each year. Part of the training schools undergo includes teaching lockdowns, while others teach how to respond to an event, including the widely taught run, hide, fight philosophy. Swatting is another major issue, and now, thanks to a new law, it makes it a felony. Lawmakers passed it at the very end of the lame duck session last December. You may remember this. Swatting is that prank call that impedes valuable police resources. We saw fake 911 calls do just that at several districts. The minimum sentence is 6 months, but offenders can be sentenced to up to 18 months in prison. Those convicted can also be held liable for reimbursement of law enforcement resources used as a result of that false threat. Also this year, more laws are expected for transgender students. As classes resume, states want K-12 schools to enforce bans on trans athletes. The Ohio Capitol Journal reports about half of U.S. states are expecting their schools to enforce laws aimed at keeping transgender girls off of girls' sports teams. Supporters argue they are protecting fair competition and scholarship opportunities. But it's important to note the number of transgender athletes is small, and in some states, the associations that govern high school sports can't give any examples.
How would you comment on the opposing side saying these issues should be dealt with in the home and by parents, not by the state?
Well, again, we need to follow the science. And I think that the committee was shown evidence during committee process over several months' time that this is harmful to kids and that they're not developmentally ready to make that decision.
State Representative Adam Byrd argues many parents have actually asked for this legislation. Join us all this week on Wake Up CBUS for special back-to-school coverage. It could be the next amendment on which you vote. Still to come this morning, why a group of Ohioans wants to change how the voting districts are drawn in a battle that's been years in the making. And why the president is calling this month's election a win. We analyze the votes and look at the Democrats' path to 2024 victory in Ohio.
The money that the Sacklers were going to put into the states and to compensate people who had lost loved ones is still sitting in the Sacklers' pockets. That's not right.
The Ohio Attorney General weighing in on a major opioid ruling from the Supreme Court. Welcome back. Shortly after Ohio turned down issue 1, a group started taking steps to change how the state draws its voting district maps. Specifically, they want to strip politicians of their powers to draw them. The group is gathering petition signatures for a constitutional amendment, which would dissolve the commission that does this. Instead, they want a 15-member group of people, all political parties, to make the decisions. The group is hoping to have the amendment proposal on the November 2024 ballot, when Ohio will also vote for president and U.S. Senate. Now, you will remember the battle over redistricting has been contentious after several heated debates in 2021 and in 2020. A judge rules that the maps created by lawmakers unfairly favored Republicans. We asked Governor DeWine about redistricting at the end of last year before the Supreme Court told the state Supreme Court to reassess the case.
This was a new, relatively new, 2 constitutional amendments. Democrats, Republicans came together to try to come up with a system that would make redistricting, reapportionment work better. It didn't. It just did not work. We ended up in court. Unfortunately, we ended up with a Supreme Court series of decisions that to some extent flew in the face of what the objective was. The objective, one of the main objectives, was to have more compact districts and at the same time have more competitive districts. Everyone believes that we should have more competitive districts rather than fewer competitive districts. Yet if you look at the Supreme Court decision, it compelled us in some cases to have fewer, not more, competitive districts. No one envisioned that, but that's where we are today, and that's a problem.
It's a problem that how are you going to fix?
Look, I think the only way we're really going to be able to permanently fix this is to go back, try to put a coalition of Democrats and Republicans together and come up with a new constitutional amendment. I don't know any other way of doing it.
One issue that's going to be on this November's ballot, legalizing marijuana. Ohioans will vote whether to make recreational marijuana legal in the state after supporters were able to secure enough signatures to put the measure on the November ballot. If passed, adults 21 and over would be allowed to buy and possess up to 2.5 ounces of marijuana and will be able to grow it at home. A 10% tax would support administrative costs, addiction treatment, municipalities with dispensaries, and social equity and jobs programs. Opponents of the measure say legalizing marijuana would be a public health risk. Advocates disagree.
You know, it is a public health risk, is to have a vibrant illicit market free from any regulation, where people selling marijuana products don't have to test them.
Now, if voters pass the measure, Ohio will be the 24th state to legalize cannabis for adult use. A petition like the one on redistricting and marijuana will be easier to pass now that issue 1 is dead. Voters turned down the question, which would have required those citizens leading the redistricting charge to have at least 5% of voters from the last gubernatorial election in all 88 Ohio counties. It would have also eliminated the 10-day period to get more signatures the Secretary of State's office deemed faulty. Of course, that didn't happen in that sweeping no vote earlier this month. Also winning from the issue 1 failure, the Biden campaign. This week, Biden's campaign manager sent an email taking partial credit for the results from this month's election. Joe Biden's team says the overwhelming win against issue 1 is proof that his team is being underestimated. Well, this morning, Clay Gordon continues our issue 1 coverage with what the election means for Democrats in 2024.
President Joe Biden's campaign team is looking toward issue 1 results as a success story for the 2024 presidential election. In a memo sent to the president's allies, Biden's campaign manager took partial credit for the denial of the issue, one that was partly invested in by the Democratic National Committee. In that memo, first reported by Politico, Julie Chavez Rodriguez said the country is seeing more evidence that the president and vice president's message is the right one for 2024, and that, quote, our campaign is partnering with a stronger than ever national party that is already investing up and down the ballot and organizing in communities year round, end quote. The Biden campaign has had a successful year for elections, including several key votes that show there is some momentum for the party. The president continues to focus on the positives as the investigation into his son, Hunter Biden, continues. Even still, Democrats are looking towards this win as a sign for November and next year.
For Democrats, it's a sign of life. They have taken an awful lot of losses in Ohio, election after election. And I think one of the big winners from issue 1, besides the Reproductive Rights Amendment in November, is Senator Brown, just because it shows there's still a viable way to win in Ohio and do the thing that the Republicans don't want to have happen. And really the last time Ohio did that for a Democrat was Sherrod Brown himself, the last time he was on the ballot.
One of those signs of life is Delaware County, a typical Republican stronghold. Delaware County voted against issue 1 by 15 points. Last year, J.D. Vance won by just over 6 points, and former President Donald Trump carried Delaware County by almost 7 points in 2020. Democrats are looking toward counties like Delaware County as a path to 2024. Just take a look at the 2020 presidential election map and the issue 1 results. Many more suburban areas voting against the Republican issue. That's around Cleveland, Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati. It's those suburban areas where campaigns hope to win, where Republicans have been pitching their plans in Iowa.
We should want to win the majority of Americans. We have the solutions. We know how to lift up everybody. We just have to communicate it the right way. This is not rocket science. This is common sense.
That's why I'm campaigning, because I believe that my optimistic, positive message is being rooted in Iowa, and that, frankly, our poll numbers continue to go up. That's great news.
We're also going to help middle-class families and jobs by utilizing all of our domestic energy resources and being energy independent in this country.
The fact is that we have a country that's in serious trouble. We have a country that's in major decline. I don't mean decline, I mean major decline. And we're going to straighten it out.
A recent Suffolk USA Today poll conducted before Trump's most recent indictment in Georgia shows him winning against Biden. Out of 500 people, 38% said if the election was held now, they would vote for President Biden. 44% say they're supporting Trump. That same poll asked voters about how good of a job the president is doing now. 10% strongly approve, 31% approve, 12% disapprove, and 42% strongly disapprove of the job President Biden is doing. Those numbers align with who voters are supporting. So, lots to take in. And a long election season ahead. The 2024 election is still 443 days away, but first the campaigns are looking to Ohioans come November. Clay Gordon, 10 TV News.
Clay leaves us with a countdown. Thank you so much. Ahead this morning, the increase in overdoses, why it's not just opioids that are of concern. Also, the debate over guns.
We believe that we need to have some common sense gun laws, and we can also support the Second Amendment and make our communities safe.
The battle between the city and the state over how to tackle the violence.
The money that the Sacklers were going to put into the states and to compensate people who had lost loved ones is still sitting in the Sacklers' pockets. That's not right. And I just hope the Supreme Court moves quickly when they hear this in December.
This morning, we're hearing from the Ohio Attorney General after the Supreme Court blocked Purdue Pharma from going forward with bankruptcy proceedings. The Biden administration has called it an unprecedented arrangement that would ultimately offer the Sackler family broad protection from opioid-related civil claims. The court also said it would take up the case and hear arguments this December. Unintentional drug overdose deaths continue to be a problem in our state. The latest numbers from the Ohio Department of Health show increases in the last decade. The number of deaths is up from 1,500 in 2013 or 4,100 in 2022. Most deaths, about 80%, are caused by fentanyl. Ohio is averaging around 5,000 overdose deaths each year. There is some 800 deaths in Franklin County, according to the coroner's office. Countywide, law enforcement is taking on drug trafficking through what they call coordinated blitzes. They're not just looking for fentanyl, however. Take a listen for why.
And I know people will say, well, what's the big deal about marijuana? Well, what's a big deal is we're finding marijuana laced with fentanyl, with other drugs. People are using this, they're overdosing.
Whitehall Deputy Chief Dan Kelso also told Crime Tracker 10 this week it's not just marijuana that's being laced with fentanyl. Police are finding cocaine mixed with the deadly drug, which is responsible for killing most people who OD after using cocaine. Another hurdle for the city of Columbus trying to change gun laws in the capital city. A gun lawsuit filed by city leaders is now headed back to a Franklin County courthouse. This week, the District Appeals Court decided there needs to be new, fresh evidence in that case. The lawsuit was first filed in 2019. The city is suing the state to allow cities to pass regulations. Columbus City Attorney Zach Klein says they are ready to keep fighting to allow cities to pass common sense gun legislation. He's pushing for things like safe storage, universal background checks, and red flag laws. He told 10 TV in an interview this week that the city will be able to present new evidence on why those things are necessary.
Our citizens demand it. We need to be able to do it. The police and the community support us. Gun violence is a problem in our city, our state, our country. And, I think people are fed up.
Attorney General Dave Yost responding via statement this morning telling us, quote, the court's ruling assures that all Ohioans must abide by the same law, state law, when it comes to firearms. Well, there's no date set just yet on when this will go to court. We will, of course, be monitoring that. We thank you for joining us this morning on Face the State. We wish you a great week.